I just happen to have with me a Blessed Carlos relic, okay? But while we're waiting for the speakers, I will be where St. Joseph is with the relic if anybody wants the chance to venerate. It is a first degree. That's perfect. Okay, so if anybody wants that opportunity, I'll be right there.
So, when should we? Brother Thomas is asking about the closing of the church. So, what time would you like to?
For tonight?
Yeah.
We're supposed to be over by, I'd say, 9:30. We're supposed to. The buses we're supposed to start leaving at 9. The buses are supposed to leave at 9:30.
Yeah.
like your speakers to have chairs, or would they stand at the podium? Doesn't matter, I don't know what their preference is. But the camera is trained in this area, so. Honey, do you want to talk into the mic or no? I can't. Okay.
Okay. 30 seconds.
To talk. It's on. It's on.
I'm just going to say, okay. If anyone wants an opportunity, this is like a very rare opportunity. It's a first-degree relic of Blessed Carlo. We have the examples of the Eucharistic miracles. Well, he's the young fella that did all that work. And there's already been one miracle through him. I would love to know that another miracle happened today. So if you're interested, I have him here. Thank you.
Good evening. And while you are taking your seats, I'd just like to do a little housekeeping. My name is Nancy Cressy, and if any of you have any needs in the coming days, I can surely at least try to help. Just want to let you know that this evening, the buses will arrive outside at 9 p.m. and will be accepting pickups until approximately 9:30, at which time they leave for the hotels. Tomorrow morning, the buses will pick you up at your respective hotels at 6:15. So I just wanted to make that clear. Grab an early breakfast. I know at the hotel where I'm staying, they start breakfast at 6, so plan accordingly and you can enjoy a continental breakfast here as well. Okay? We'll be getting started momentarily. Good evening. I know we've had a long day, but we still have so much more to do, right? My name is Nancy Cressy again, and I'd like to welcome you to the evening, some very special presentations that we're going to be having. The first presenter, you've already had the opportunity briefly to be introduced to her before. This is Sister Emanuela Edwards, MDR, Missionaries of Divine Revelation from Rome, Italy. She actually has said that there are many devotees having to do with the story that she's about to tell you of our Blessed Mother, and she's brought some special soil. So without any further ado, Sister Emanuela Edwards.
Good evening, everyone. It's a great delight to be here with you this evening. The first thing everyone says, of course, is it's the green sister. You can see instantly from the wonderful statue why we were green. My name is Sister Emanuela from the Missionaries of Divine Revelation, and we were born from this wonderful story of the Virgin of Revelation who appeared at Tre Fontane on the 12th of April 1947. And tonight I would like to recount a little bit about this apparition in more detail, and also kind of reflect on the way that God works in our lives, and the way that we should be open perhaps to the fact that today miracles continue to happen, and we shouldn't be really so surprised about that. On the 12th of April 1947, we can say it was a day blessed by divine providence. It was a day when heaven and earth met, and the Lord sent his Blessed Mother to bring graces to the world. On that day, Bruno Cornacchiola, who was an anti-clerical Protestant who had in mind to kill Pope Pius XII, was left to mind his children because his wife was ill. By chance, or divine providence rather, he missed the train to Ostia, the beach, and instead took a tram out to the place known as the Three Fountains, Tre Fontane. This place has been famous since the 1st century because it was at the Three Fountains where St. Paul the Apostle was martyred in AD 67. He was decapitated there, and his head bounced 3 times, and up sprung 3 miraculous fountains, hence the name Tre Fontane. And it was exactly across the street, in a wood of eucalyptus trees, where Our Lady chose to appear to Bruno Cornacchiola in this grotto that had been a place of sin. Just like St. Paul, Bruno too was a persecutor of the church. He'd participated in the Spanish Civil War, and there he met a man called Otto who convinced him that all the problems in the world were due to the Holy Father. And so this hatred for the Catholic Church and the Holy Father in particular grew in his heart. In Toledo he bought a dagger, and on the handle he wrote, "Death to the Pope." On that day, though, he was tasked with writing a speech. He was a member of the Seventh Adventist movement, and he was preparing a speech that he would give the next day against Our Lady, saying that she was neither an immaculate nor a virgin. Typically, for the Protestant method, he would search through the Bible looking for the phrases to support this thesis. And this was his occupation, whilst his children played ball. All of a sudden, the ball went missing, and the children asked the dad to help them find the ball. First, the young one, Jim Franco, who was 4, was found kneeling in front of the grotto. Beautiful lady, beautiful lady, beautiful lady. Then Isola, who was 10 and a half, knelt down too and joined the chorus. Beautiful lady, beautiful lady, beautiful lady. And then finally Carlo, who was 8, also put himself to his knees and started in the chorus. Beautiful lady, beautiful lady, beautiful lady. Bruno became annoyed and he tried to move them. He wasn't known for his patience. But instead, they were like marble and he couldn't move them. And so at that moment, he called out for help. He said, God, help us. And then he saw as if 2 hands coming towards him to remove the scales from his eyes. This time, he too saw the beautiful lady. As you can see from the beautiful statue, Our Lady appeared with a green mantle. She had a white tunic with a rose-coloured sash. And in her hands she held a book, the Bible, the book of divine revelation. Now then, you can imagine what Our Lady had to say to Bruno. She said, I am who I am in the divine Trinity. I am the Virgin of Revelation. You persecute me. Enough now. Re-enter to the holy sheepfold, which is the Catholic Church. These were very, very powerful words. Our Lady called Bruno back into the true faith. She also said something that reminds us of what the Lord said to St. Paul. She said, you persecute me, just in the same way as the Lord said to Saul on the road to Damascus, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Our Lady identifies with the church totally in the same way as our dear Lord. Our Lady would speak to Bruno for just over an hour, and in that time she said many things. Our Lady spoke about the priesthood and its importance. She showed Bruno a ripped cassock and a broken cross, which Bruno himself had snapped in two when he returned from the Spanish Civil War. And Our Lady told Bruno that my sons will despoil themselves inside and out. And she would explain that the priests are the servants closest to Jesus, the high priest, and that they are the instruments through which grace passes to souls. They are critical to God's plan of salvation. And so this was in 1947, when all the priests wore a habit and we could easily identify them. And so it was seen as a prophecy of what would come later. But it reminds each of us today of the importance of the priesthood and the need to pray and cherish the priests, especially. Our Lady also spoke about devotions. Because Yolanda, Bruno's wife, didn't want to become a Protestant. And so, as a last-ditch attempt, she made a bet with Bruno. She said, do the 9 First Fridays to the Sacred Heart. And if after 9 First Fridays you haven't changed your mind, then it is as you say, it's just a fable. Bruno practiced the 9 First Fridays. Not really with any, what can we say? He received communion without being in a state of grace. He didn't go to confession. But on 9 Fridays, the first Fridays of the month, he did go to Mass. When Our Lady appeared, she said to him, the 9 First Fridays to the Sacred Heart, a divine promise that you made before entering into lies and becoming a ruthless, unfounded enemy of God, has saved you. This is incredible news because we're having this apparition, the affirmation of the power of devotion to the Sacred Heart. And so Our Lady makes no bones. She tells Bruno that this devotion, so poorly said and recounted, has actually saved him. And so we have also a call for us too to practice this powerful devotion to Our Lady. How often do we really believe in the power of the devotions that we practice? In this apparition, we have an affirmation of the truths of these pious practices that help to bring us closer to God. And so it's a sign of their great power and importance. I'll move on quickly because I'd like to talk about Our Lady's Assumption into heaven, the fourth dogma about Our Lady. In 1947, Pope Pius, in the 1940s, Pope Pius XII was contemplating whether it was opportune to proclaim the dogma of the Assumption. In 1946, he wrote a letter to the whole church asking for their opinion and asking for prayers and thanksgiving that some confirmation would arrive. On the 12th of April 1947, that confirmation arrived because Our Lady told Bruno, my body could not die and did not die, so it could not decay and did not decay, because I am immaculate. It was in the ecstasy of divine love that I was taken to heaven by Jesus. Obviously, as we know, Pope Pius XII will proclaim the dogma of the Assumption on the 1st of November, 1950. And so that heavenly confirmation assisted in the proclamation of this dogma. In Lourdes, Our Lady appeared after the dogma had been proclaimed. At Tre Fontane in Rome, she appeared before. She anticipated the dogma. We're just a few short days away from the start of the novena for the Assumption. And this is very, very important. And on the 15th, the Church will raise up songs of joy in honour of our Blessed Mother. But it also helps that we understand the importance of this dogma for our lives. Our Lady, we often refer to as the Star of David, who shows us the way home. We believe in this dogma, with the definition of this dogma, that Our Lady today lives outside space and time with our Lord, body and soul in heaven. Why should that make such a difference to us? Why? Because Our Lady, who loves us so much, is best placed in heaven with God to intercede for us. Not only that, Our Lady shows us our destiny too, the way to heaven. And that at the end of our lives, at the end of time, we too are destined to be where our Blessed Mother is. And this can console us all when we think about those who have gone before. And so we have to celebrate the truths of the faith. When we say every Sunday the Creed, I believe in the resurrection of the dead, we should think of our Blessed Mother, who is already enjoying the fruits of our Lord's gift of salvation to mankind. And so this is very, very important. Turning to the more theologically based messages, Our Lady said, the true church of my Son is founded on three white loves, the Eucharist, the Immaculate, and the Holy Father. Our Lady gave us the way to understand the true church, that often there's often questions, there's often confusion today, and Our Lady tells us to look for these three things: devotion to our Lord in the Eucharist, his presence amongst us, devotion to Our Lady, and also to the Holy Father, which means the teaching tradition of the Church. In this apparition, Our Lady gives us these three white loves as the means of distinguishing the true Church of her Son, because any place that doesn't recognise the Eucharist, the Immaculate One, and the Holy Father, and the truths of the faith as they've always been, is not the church founded by Our Lady's Son. And so we can be confident in our faith, because in the Catholic Church we have preserved the Eucharist, devotion to Our Lady, and everything that is in the deposit of faith that was taught by our Lord to the apostles until this day. And we see it in the unbroken chain from Christ to Peter, all the way to Pope Francis today. And so we should rejoice, and this should make us confident in the faith and proud to be Catholic. Our Lady also went on and she said, the Hail Marys that you say with faith and love are like golden arrows to the heart of my Son. I spoke of this briefly this morning, how powerful is a Hail Mary when we say it with faith and love. Just think about it. When you talk to those who you love with conviction, are they not moved to help? And Our Lady assures us that it is exactly the same with Jesus. And so we have the formula to pray with faith and love our Hail Marys. If a Hail Mary is so powerful, imagine the power of the Rosary. And indeed, Our Lady said, never stop saying the Holy Rosary. I am always with you to help you. Our Lady, just as in the other Marian apparitions of our time, calls us to pray the Holy Rosary. She assures us that this is our means of help. Whenever we're in difficulties, whenever we're in trouble, we should take up our weapon that shows our faith and devotion to our Blessed Mother, which is, of course, the Holy Rosary. So take up the Rosary knowing Our Lady will come to our aid in all our needs, in every circumstance of our life, and we can never be overcome with the Rosary in hand. Our Lady also promised great miracles from the soil at Tre Fontane. She said, with this soil of sin, I will work great miracles for unbelievers and sinners. It's referred to as soil of sin because the grotto was a place of sins. But with Our Lady's presence in the grotto, it became sanctified and a means of bringing about great miracles. So just as the water of Massabielle is blessed in Lourdes, at Trefontane it is the soil. And indeed, this evening we've distributed cards with the soil so that you can all benefit from this promise from our Blessed Mother. I suppose at this moment I'd like to take a moment to ponder the role of the nurse, and I'd like you to think, have you ever seen a miracle? Do we believe that miracles exist? As Catholics, we're in the business of miracles, we can say, because in every Holy Mass we have the greatest miracle of all, when the Lord himself becomes present on the altar. Indeed, Our Lady promised great miracles, and she lost no time in fulfilling this prophecy. The first miracle started straight after the apparition. In June, on the 6th of June 1947, the first miracle was announced in the papers. Carlo Mancuso fell down 4 feet down a lift shaft and broke his hip bone and was in terrible pain. They applied the soil of the grotto and he was cured, although, strangely, the x-rays showed his bones were still broken, right up until the time of his death. And yet, he could move normally. One thing, if you ever go to Trefontane, you go behind the grotto, you can see all the miracles. There are those who leave what's known in Italian as per grazia ricevuto, for grace is received. And there are many. You're almost astounded. But there are many more where people don't leave a marble plaque. There are many, many spiritual healings that have come from the grotto, but also many miracles. By December 1947, just a few months really after the apparition, there was 100 miraculous healings reported that were being investigated by those who worked in the medical bureau at Lourdes. Dr. Alain wrote something very, very important. He said, after years of objective investigation, under strict controls, I can affirm that many prodigious cures have taken place. These cures amaze physicians, for they transcend current scientific knowledge. There. And so Our Lady has fulfilled a prophecy of many miracles. But in fact, I'd like to recount perhaps the first miracle, I think, that took place, who took place on Mario Coccoliati, who was a soldier. A nurse who was working in the hospital took some soil from the grotto after hearing of Our Lady's promise and applied it to him, and he was cured. And here, speaking to this distinguished group, I would like to say it was the action of the nurse, it was the faith of the nurse that brought about this miracle. Our foundress, Mother Prisca, always says a little bit of soil and a lot of faith. And it was a lot of faith that inspired that nurse to place the soil on that soldier, and so was able to obtain this blessing from heaven. How many times as nurses are you able to do something like that? What is the difference between a nurse and a Catholic nurse. The difference is the faith. The difference is that the Catholic nurse is willing to go out there and make an act of faith in order to treat the whole person, the whole sick person that has been placed in their care. And this is what makes the difference. It's a little act and a big, miraculous act. This is an example that follows from this apparition, but how many times as Catholic nurses do you make the difference? I can only tell you the comfort that one receives when you know that a loved one has received the sacrament of the sick. And very often these days, it's because the nurse believes, it's because the nurse facilitates that the priest is called. Because in that moment, the nurse recognizes the power of the priest to administer the sacraments, the power of the priest to reconcile that soul to God and prepare them for eternal life. These are little acts maybe, but great acts that are performed in the everyday work of a nurse. And so I say thank you to each and every one of you that you exist. I say thank you that you make these acts of faith. I say thank you that you're able to look beyond the material, beyond the mere physical condition, and go beyond to the spirit, to the supernatural. I say thank you that you can see that we have before us, we're called to an eternity of total happiness, and that you work in order to assist the soul reach the real destination, the real home. And this is the magnificence of a Catholic nurse. Our Lady said, "Be missionaries of the word of truth." Yes, it's fabulous when we call the priest in order to administer the sacrament of the sick. There's another moment in your daily work that is magnificent. When perhaps as you come about and do your daily tasks, you record someone who's suffering the consoling words of our Lord. And this is a good practice for a Catholic nurse, to learn what we call in the convent our spiritual pills. And these are so important for helping us on our daily journey. What is our spiritual pills? Those words from the gospel, the Lord's own word, because this is the word of God, and so it's true. And so when we read those words, we find encouragement, love, hope. The eye hasn't seen, nor the ear heard the joy that awaits those who love the Lord. Imagine in the midst of suffering to hear such hope. And so, dear friends, thank you. This apparition can, if you like, enlighten your work, because it can help you in your daily lives to nourish your own spiritual progress too. Feed yourselves each day on the Word of God, so that in that way you can deliver spiritual pills to those in your care. I'll take just a few moments to conclude the story about the apparition. Bruno, after the apparition, of course, came back into the church. 2 years later, he consigned the dagger that he bought to kill Pope Pius XII to Pope Pius XII, and he asked for forgiveness. Pope Pius XII responded, "Oh, my dear son, if you'd succeeded in killing me, you would have just added another martyr to the list of saints and another pope." But Pope Pius XII did give Bruno permission to talk about the apparition, and so was born a mission of evangelization. In 1956, the Vicariate of Rome entrusted the sanctuary to the Franciscans. In 1993, the Vicariate of Rome bought the ground upon which the grotto stands. And in 1997, John Paul II entitled the grotto Our Lady of the Third Millennium at Tre Fontane. Things have been exciting this last year. Now the Vicariate of Rome, the Pope's delegate, Cardinal De Donatis, has appointed a new rector a diocesan rector to the sanctuary, with the idea that it will become a sanctuary for Rome. And so we can only say, watch this space. The miracles continue. We can't possibly recount them all. But nevertheless, we're sure that Our Lady will bless you with many graces for those who pray with faith and love. And this is my recommendation for each and every one of you. I pray that the Virgin of Revelation will bless you all. And Our Lady, we have a greeting. We say, God bless us, to which everyone responds, and the Virgin protect us. And so it seems quite fitting that I would conclude this evening by saying, God bless us. Thank you.
Wow, I have never been so proud to be a Catholic nurse. And I say that because I practiced, although I'm sure I don't look that old, I practiced in the 70s, and I was taught, raised to be a Catholic, and I became a nurse. The youngest RN in the state of New Jersey, as a matter of fact. But I was taught to be both separately. I was in a non-religious hospital. I was a proud Catholic and a proud nurse. And I didn't marry the two until I found this organization. So I say with much humility and much pride that I'm very proud to be a Catholic nurse together. Thank you very much, Sister Emanuela. And next, we have a special presentation that you were given just a glimpse of earlier today. Immaculée, il be God's, nope, I'll get this. My last name is Jaskowak, so I do last names. Ilibagiza. Yes? Good. I said it right. Is she here? Has she joined us? She's in the back? Yes, please join us. We had the pleasure of meeting you briefly. You're an inspiration, and we can't wait for you to join us now. Thank you. So that you might speak to us and Please join us. She is responsible for the story behind Left to Tell, Discovering God Amidst the Rwandan Holocaust, a New York Times bestseller, a story showcased on 60 Minutes, the CBS Early Show, CNN, EWTN, the CBS Evening News, the Al Jazeera Network, and many more. Immaculée is regarded as one of the world's leading speakers on faith, hope, and forgiveness. And speaking those words and knowing a little bit of your story, I have chills, so I'm moved. A major motion picture of her life is in development. I'd like to introduce you again to Miss Immaculée Ibigazi.
Thank you so much. It is really, again, a great joy to be here with you. It is nice to be among nurses who touch the lives of people every day in such a powerful way. I mean, when you go to a doctor, your life is just in the hands of the nurse. They can do what they want, you know? So to feel that you are the people who have faith and who actually not only just do what you're supposed to do, but want to give life, want to teach, want to give faith, and want to share Jesus with people, it's really nice. Because as we are here in this beautiful church, we know there is nothing more important in life than trying to give people God, to love them in a way that they are touched, and then they can remember that, because we don't forget how we are loved and how we have been touched. So it is really a joy to be here. And to know that this weekend is dedicated to Our Lady, to the many apparitions, this is too good to be true. You know, this is the things I go to search on a computer, find out. Now I'm talking to people who come from those places. You know, to the nuns who dedicated themselves to spread the message of Our Lady, of the revelation. I'm like, how is this possible? So I'm in a very good place. So speaking a little bit about my story, of course, I can speak much longer. I want also to share a little bit more about Our Lady of Kibeho. I feel so happy to have been born in a time of the apparitions in Rwanda. And, Kibeho is so far actually the only apparition approved by the Vatican on the continent of Africa. But saying that also, I have heard that Our Lady herself have said she have appeared in every country. Every single country she have appeared. So our dear Mother, of course, loves everyone the same, but our church also have the right and to be prudent and to continue to approve more. But I'm so happy to have seen what have happened. The apparition in Rwanda started when I was 11 years old. It was actually very funny, to be here today and to write about Our Lady of Kibeho, because when the apparition started, I remember I was going through a crisis of faith, which is almost, again, unbelievable to think like 10 years old is going through a crisis of faith. So in my family, we grew up praying. I don't remember, as I said earlier, one night we ever went to sleep without praying together. But all of a sudden, when I was like 8 years old, 9 years old, I started to question everything. Who was there when they wrote the Bible? Why do they say it is? How do they know for sure? And then because my family was so much Catholic and prayer, I didn't think I can ask them the questions you ask when you are beginning, because they was too far ahead of myself. So I was eaten by these bad thoughts in my heart. And how? What if God is not real? So in my language, my native language, Kinyarwanda, Africa has many, many languages. In my native language, the sky and heaven is the same word, Ijuru. So they used to say, when you see a mountain like this and you see the sky over, they said that's heaven. So I used to think if you go to that mountain, you can touch heaven and then you can go to see God. So me and my friends, we used to travel actually to go to heaven. And then when we went to the hill, heaven moved. And we went to the next one, and heaven moved again. I said, no, this is not true. So with that crisis, I couldn't again speak to my parents. And something happened and this was, by the way, even if it is that childhood, but it was something that was heavy in my heart. Because I remember I started to have like nightmares. Faith, even for children, it can affect them when they're losing that. So I remember when I went to my school, I was in the 4th grade, primary school. My teacher, who was a Protestant, read us a story about Our Lady of Fatima. And the more she read, because you see, I find that all of us, many times, or people, here I'm talking to faithful people, people struggle with faith because there's some kind of the key, almost like locked, and we don't know what it is. Sometimes we lose our faith because of somebody we love who have lost their faith or who have done something wrong and then disappoint us, and then our faith goes with it. But this time for me I didn't think something supernatural was even possible. I felt we die and that's it. I have not seen anything supernatural. So if only I can see something like that, at least that was going to open my heart again. So I went to this school and my teacher read us about Our Lady of Fatima. And then as she kept reading, she spoke about these 3 children, 2 girls and 1 boy, who had a miracle to see somebody from heaven, Our Lady. And then what really shocked me even more was the miracle of the sun, that it happened. And then she spoke to them about this in simple ways, about the same thing our church tells us about: reading the Bible, go to adoration, keep Jesus company in the Blessed Sacrament, going to confession, show them hell, spoke to them about heaven. I'm like, well, those are the kind of thing our priest tells us, but this thing about supernatural, I don't understand that. If that was true, that means everything the beautiful mother was speaking about was going to be true. So after the teacher read us the whole story, or how it happened, they were shepherded, I remember thinking, okay, I wish this was true. Then my faith will come back, because there's nothing like this, right? So I dared to ask the teacher, and I asked her, so, wow, somebody really have a good imagination. Somebody put together this story, right? I was hoping she tells me it's true. And then she smiled and she said, oh, Immaculate, it is true. It is true. Now I'm learning this from a Protestant person. So I asked her, what do you mean it's true? Somebody came from heaven to speak to people on earth? She said, oh, yes, this happened. And then she told me, I asked her, well, how come our priest doesn't know about this? How come the Catholic Church doesn't know about this? She laughed again. She said, oh, if they know about this, they are the ones who actually, investigated it. She doesn't know what she did to me, because I really had trust in my priest. He was a friend of the family. He was somebody we loved and really admired. So I thought, if my teacher knows, my priest knows, then it has to be true. In a simple way like that, I felt like she handed me back my faith. But when I came outside of that school, I became a child again. I started to think, wait, I can have apparition too. I know what to do. You just have to be 2 girls. You need a boy. You need to be shepherds. And you have to say the rosary. So I went to my friend Janet, my poet Janet. She survived also after the genocide in her family. I told her, let's have apparitions. She's like, how do you do that? I'm like, well, we need a boy. We just 2 girls. And then I told her, and we need to be shepherds, and we need to say the rosary. She's like, I'm not a Catholic. I don't say the rosary. I'm like, don't you want to see the sun, the miracle of the sun, and to see Our Lady? She's like, okay, fine. Poor kids. So we started every evening. Thank God our parents have goats and sheep. Every evening we took the goats out and the sheep so we can have apparition. We looked for a little bush, just like in Fatima. We thought if we do 1, 2, 3 things, Our Lady will just come. And this is the funniest thing. Anytime we saw a flash, we run. We thought Our Lady was coming. I'm like, she's here. Then I'm like, why are we scared? And we want Our Lady to come. So Our Lady didn't come during those days, we're doing this, but I truly thought as long as we do everything right, she would come. So we never forget, we thought, okay, maybe she's not coming. Every day we say the rosary. I told them the rosary. We had to convince her poor brother, Clement, to join us. So every day we say the rosary. And one time I said, maybe something is wrong. Maybe we need to find a bigger place where 70,000 people are going to come. So we went to find the place, and our sweet mother, I think she was laughing as some of you are. Before we found the place, I found the place actually, but before we went there to prepare it, we thought we were going to make like a circle of flowers and make a fence, so when we're having apparitions, people will not fall over us. And after we found it, before we went to put the flowers, I'm not kidding, this is the truth, I shared this in my book, Our Lady of Kibeho. Before we went to put the flowers one evening, my father, he was a director of Catholic schools, so he spent his time with a priest. He came one evening, he wasn't talking. I mean, in my family, we didn't have TV, we didn't have the phones, we didn't have a computer. So when we see each other evening, we had to sit and talk. How was your day? What happened, Dad? How are the kids? What the priest said? He wasn't talking. And suddenly he told us what happened. He said, it looks like Our Lady is appearing in a place called Kibeho. This is 3 hours away from us, drive. And to a high school student. And this is serious. It can be good for us, for the church, but it can be bad if these kids are playing the games. My brothers, I remember they were like, oh, Dad, don't believe those kids. They're teenagers. They're just trying to attract attention. Where I was crying. My father is like, what happened? I'm like, she's supposed to come here. I don't know what happened. My dad was really good with kids. And then he started to ask me questions. Why do you think she's supposed to be here? I'm just 10 years old. And I thought the whole secret, I spilled them out. I'm like, well, we have been trying to do this. We have been shepherd, this and that. Me and Janet and Clement, we are just the right age. We are 10, just like kids on Fatima. He listened, and my father was again good. He told me that he thinks it's because we didn't go to put the flowers and make the fence. That's why Our Lady didn't come. And she must have gone to Kibeho because they were ready. And then he convinced me, however, I think the message concerns you because you were really ready. I think if I were you, I would go to tell the priest, tell him what happened, and tell him that you need to hear the messages because they're yours. We took it just like that. So me and my poor friend Janet, every Wednesday we went to see our priest. I'm like, we need to hear the messages of Our Lady of Kibeho because they are ours. Who was also very nice. He's like, okay, fine, good. And he would ask his friend's priest in Kibeho to record the messages and bring them to a village so that we can hear. So Our Lady in Rwanda, she appeared in a Rwandan way. Our dear mother, she's always the same in Fatima, she's the same in Mexico, she's the same in Italy. But I love that when she goes to a country, she speaks to them from the language first they can hear. She speaks to them in a culture that they can hear, they can understand, but she remains the same. You realize completely her words, what she's trying to accomplish is the same thing. It's like going to school in the same country, different countries, but you still have to come back to the same thing. They're teaching you mathematics and this and that, so you have to learn the same common things, but Our Lady comes the way you understand it. So Our Lady in Kibeho, first she appeared, it was November 28, 1981, to the first visionary whose name was Alphonsine Mumuleke. So talking about the culture, how she chooses in a way of culture. In Rwanda, everybody have a different last name. I came to America and everybody have the same last name. I'm like, why do you have the same names? In a family. It's like, well, that's a family name. And then people start to ask me, how come you have different names? How do you know each other? I'm like, do you have to know your brother? You know them already. So anyway, in our culture, we have a different last name. And the last name is given to you by your father on the 8th day after you were born. So the father is supposed to be thinking for the 7 days which name he's going to give you. So it's a very big deal. Every woman wants to have a father, your husband, because who is going to name the children. So it's very, strong. So anyway, my name was given to me by my dad. So everyone have different last name. So the first visionary, Alphonsine Mumuleke, she was having lunch, she was serving the other kids, and then Our Lady came, the most beautiful woman, dressed in white, and told her she was a mother of the world, and told her she have a message she's supposed to share with the world. And starting with the students around in her school. But the students, the teachers, the nuns who were running the school, and obviously, understandably, they didn't believe her quickly. Actually, other kids, they got jealous. They started to persecute her. They would put mud in her bed. They would put stones. They would throw stones over her. It was really not good. But guess what her name is? So she used to tell Our Lady, Mother, appear to somebody else, because no, they don't believe me, and they need to believe your message. It's serious. Guess what her last name means? Because everyone have their own last name. Her last name means, Mumureke, means leave her alone. And that is the name that was given to her by her father when she was 7 days. So she's begging Our Lady, please, Mother, appear to somebody else. So this time, Our Lady appeared to another girl who was much more quiet, belonged to the prayer group of the charismatic, the Legions of Mary, very quiet. So in our culture, when you are quiet, you are a good girl. You don't say much, you don't attract attention. She was just the perfect girl. And then she belongs to prayer group. So you have every reason to believe that, she's good. So Our Lady appeared to her. Guess what her last name is? And this was a name, the girl, now who really kind of, people think, well, if she can have apparitions, it must be true. Because she's not like that. She doesn't attract attention. And her last name, Mukamazimaka, means the one who settles arguments. The one who settles arguments. And this, again, Our Lady chose just naturally from the father's name. Or men in our country, they felt really good. Like, you see, Our Lady approves us. And how we name the children. You see, God works with us. But it was beautiful to see, because it is really a beautiful culture. But anyway, the one who settles arguments. They had apparitions, but still they were persecuted. But then Our Lady appeared to a third person whose name, Marie Claire Mukangango, the one who actually got the message to spread the Seven Sorrows Rosary. Her name didn't mean much, but her character. She was the head of the crew of the other kids. Who was the kids who were persecuting the other visionaries. So Our Lady appeared to her. The first thing she said was, I'm going to fight, when Our Lady called her name. And then Our Lady said, my child, why would you fight me? And then she said, oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was about guys, because the devil have started to come to her. So she started to have apparition, and that is when everybody started to really believe what was going on. So again, I'm kind of putting in perspective of a culture, which, by the way, have made me love people's cultures. I'm in America. I love to know how people do things. I'm already having plans to go to do apple picking? Yeah? Apple picking, there you go. I'm in a Philly, I'm going to eat sandwich steak. I know the bishop said. So I'm taking the recommendation. I truly love people's culture. I go to Mexico, I want to feel what they do, any other country, because I realize that God really loves our culture. And there is every country there can be bad habits, but bad habits is different than, culture. So I love it because Our Lady came in a language we understand. Even the way she spoke, the visionaries used to say, Kinyarwanda, our native language she speaks, she's so perfect. She speaks like our ancestors. Her language is very clear and very clean. Now like people borrow words like, a shirt, and we say a shirt in Kinyarwanda, but it's really English word. No, Our Lady doesn't use those words. She used complete Kinyarwanda without borrowing one word. So another thing that it really, again, showed how much she was respecting who we are and again, giving the same message. So you heard in Fatima, Lourdes, well, even now in Medjugorje, Our Lady appears like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. In Rwanda, she spent 4 hours. One day, she actually stayed 8 hours. So in our culture, if a mother goes to visit a child, you don't go just to deliver a message. You go to investigate how the child is doing. You go to find out questions, to ask questions. So, for example, if my mom would come to my family, she would come to make sure that I'm treating my husband well. She come to check if you are cleaning the house well. She come to make sure you are cooking well, you're taking care of your children. That's what mothers do. They don't come just for a second. So when Our Lady came, many Europeans priests said, it can't be Our Lady. She doesn't stay this long. And then us and our priests in Rwanda, they said, it must be Our Lady. Because if she says she's a mother, she's behaving just like one. And that's exactly how she did. So in our culture, she came and spent a lot of time. People don't talk very quickly. You have to really ask a little news. How is your grammar? How was the vacation? Is it raining these days? Are people happy? This and that. And then she will start right away. Come back to God. Are you reading the Bible? Treat your other your colleagues with love. Be kind. Respect your parents. Are you reading the Bible? This and that. Are you saying your rosary, my children? I want you to say it every day. And she will start them slow. So the whole messages was the same. In Rwanda, we love singing. Or in one mass, I recorded songs that were said in one mass just to see, because now I see the differences between USA, where I am a citizen, and Rwanda, where I come from. In Rwanda, one mass, I recorded 19 songs. 19 songs with the choir, with machines. They're just like an instrument. They're singing really high. This is like 5 minutes. And we love it. So when Our Lady came, she would start a song. Oh, there's one I love. She used to start, and two songs comes to mind. One of them is where we speak about her. Before the valleys and the mountains were created, God had you in mind, Mother. She knew who was going to give us the Savior. It's a beautiful song. So Our Lady will start that, and the vision will continue. So we knew the songs she liked because she's asking to sing them. Another one that she loved, and she actually used to make us repeat, so one part especially, I remember one time she asked the visionary to repeat 3 times. No, she didn't ask. Our Lady repeated it, and the visionary will follow. Give me strength. Give me strength. Give me light. Give me humility. Give me discernment, and wrap it in love, and I will become your messenger. And then the visionary will go back again, like she's trying to go quick, and Our Lady will bring her back. Repeat that part. Give me strength. Give me light. Give me discernment, give me humility, and wrap it in love, and I will take your message. And she always reminded us, when you pray, when you sing, think of the words you are singing, so that you can know that it's a prayer also. So it was so much. Another thing we do in Rwanda, when we say bye to people, because we love to get together, we love to stay together, when we visit each other, you don't just stand up and say, I'm leaving. You start saying bye like 2 hours before. So I say, I think I'm leaving. And then the people go like, oh, take a last drink. Oh, I have a piece of cake. You must taste this. Okay, and you have to be nice, like a good Rwandan. So you have to eat and then like an hour before start to say again, I think I'm leaving soon. It was so sweet to see that Our Lady actually acknowledged that. It's a sweet culture. People just want to give you the world. When, especially in terms like that, people make time. When you come to visit, they clean the house, they cook. So you just don't come and just leave so quickly. So one time I remember I was there. Now I was much more adult because Our Lady was appearing for many years. So Our Lady came about 3 o'clock, and 5 o'clock she started saying bye. I remember she told the visionary, I think she did, she said she's leaving soon. She didn't say, I'm leaving, and then she didn't. She said, I'm leaving soon. And then the visionary said, Mother, you just came like 10 minutes ago. And then Our Lady said, but child, I've been here since 3 o'clock. And then I think she mentioned the time actually. It's 5 o'clock and 12 minutes. And then the visionary said, it cannot be 5 o'clock and 12 minutes. I still remember the visionary did not have a watch, and she was looking up. Who knows the exact minutes after 2 hours? Looking up, not looking at the watch. I mean, we were there like 50,000 people, and she's on podium. Somewhere everyone is looking at her. Everyone looked at the watch. It was exactly 5 o'clock and 12 minutes. So we took it as our little miracle, and we shouted, yes, 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 Our Lady is here. She's showing us she's here. It was beautiful. Guess what time she left? She left at 8 o'clock at night. So she was a very good Rwandan. So her message, I don't even know how long I have. But anyway, her message she was giving, you can really share it in terms of who she was, because again, she wasn't coming and she said like this only. It was the way she treated us, what she did, that you saw and tried to understand who Our Lady is. Our Lady is. Her love. One time, for example, I went to the shrine and I will share this little miracle. And I had an exam in school. So I wanted either stay in school to prepare for the exam, or I can go to the shrine and listen to the apparition and then come back 3 months later to redo the exam, because I was going to fail. So I remember the apparition was Friday and my exam was 8 o'clock Saturday. And I had to travel. So we have to come back in the middle of the night. So I took off. I said, I don't even want to ask for permission from my teacher because I'm not going to do good. And if he say no, I might disrespect him, and I don't want to disrespect him. So I took off without permission. So I went to the apparition. Our Lady is telling us to dance the songs, to pray the rosary, the 7 rosary. She would repeat how much she loves us. And again, always said, whatever I'm sharing here concerns the whole world. Towards the end of the apparition, this is what she said. My children, some people, and the visionary is repeating, have run away from school without permission. I wanted to die. I'm like, God, help me. She saw me. I want to disappear. And then she said, some people here have run away from work without permission. I thought we were in trouble. And this is how she stole my heart. And then after that, she said, but my children, because you came here out of love for your mother, when you go back, I will speak on your behalf. Nobody will be in trouble. And we started to cry. We're like, oh, you mean you're going to help me after I misbehaved? Like, who are you? It's just like, you try to know her. It was her love that was so attractive, the way she was helping us. And then there are thousands of people. So the apparition had, finished. It was over. I know she's going to help us. And she left. So we went back to school. I had so much peace in my heart. I didn't want to disturb my peace. So I went to sleep. But in the morning, I woke up and said, gosh, I'm going to have 0%. Not that I didn't think I was going to fail, but I was scared for my own reputation. I'm like, I'm going to look bad if I have 0% because I didn't study. So something in me said, just let me study a little bit. If any question comes out of even 2 pages, at least I will pass. I will try. So I took 10 pages, and I'm not kidding, 10 pages out of 350 pages. I still remember it was an exam of electricity. So it was a lot of formulas. So I went through these 10 pages over and over, back and forth, and I went to do the exam. Guess what happened? Only all the questions came out of those 10 pages I picked in the morning. I wish I have studied well so then I can really do good. But I tried to remember what I was, I studied in the morning and I passed it. I tried to do the exam and I gave the test, and the big miracle was the next day when the teacher brought us the results of the exam. Only 2 people passed the exam that day, and I was one of those 2 people. I went to church and I cried my eyes out. And what was really shocked me was, what? She meant it. Out of 50,000 people, she can see me. She knew my program alone. She knew everybody. Was she in in the morning when I was pick the book, she helped me to pick those 10 pages. How can that be? And that is our mother. That is our mother. She loves each one of us. When you think your problems are too big, when you think she can't see you, but she sees you. Of course, I can't share so much more about Our Lady and my story, but I just wanted to leave that with you, to remember the love of our dear mother. I asked one visionary in Kibeho, how does she love us? How does she love us? Tell me. She said, imagine when you have, let's say, a child of like 5-year-old. The mother goes away for 2 weeks. The child doesn't know what's going on. Nobody read the book like mom. Nobody feed you like mom. Nobody shower you like mom. And 2 weeks later, mom comes back home. And you are jumping. Mom is back. Mom is back. The visionary told me, when you see Our Lady, that's how you feel. And she told me, Immaculate, I know you ask a lot about her, but know that if you want, you can see her with your heart. And that is for all of us. We have a mother who loves us. If anything, and they have done this to me, please have that thirst to continue to discover who she is. To read more about Our Lady of Guadalupe, to understand the words Our Lady told Juan Diego. Am I not here? Do you have to worry about anything? Am I not your mother? Are you not under my protection? And that is what we have to to remember that, all of us. Our Lady of Akita, when she cries, she's crying for all of us. And whatever she says, let's do it. She asked to say the rosary every day. I asked the visionary one time, does she mean the whole rosary? She said, Immaculate, when Our Lady asks for something, she means it and it is for your own good. Yes, she asked for you the whole rosary. And if you can't say the whole rosary, at least one rosary a day. She asked also to pray the 7 Sorrows Rosary every day. But if you can't, at least twice a week. And of course, always by far number 1, if you can, go to Mass every day. So if anything, I hope I leave you that thirst of wanting to know more about Our Lady, and love her, and especially know how much she loves you. Thank you so much.
Iliba Giza. See, I got it right. Thank you again. What a wonderful story. And now I'd like to take a moment and introduce someone very special, someone that we've been waiting to listen to and waiting to hear. The Reverend Gerald E. Murray is pastor of the Church of Holy Family in New York City, USA. Born in Brooklyn, ordained priest in 1984, and went to Rome in 1993 to study canon law. Awarded a doctorate of canon law in 1998 and served briefly as a judge on the Metropolitan Tribunal before being named pastor of St. Vincent de Paul Church in New York in 1998. In 2012, Father Murray was named pastor of Holy Family Church. He is commentator and has been asked to speak on religious topics on various television and radio outlets, including EWTN, EWTN Spanish, Fox News, Fox Business News, MSNBC, New York One, Radio Maria, and the Voice of America. He's fluent in French, Spanish, and Italian, and has working knowledge of Portuguese. He served the U.S. Naval Reserve Chaplain Corps from 1994 to 2005. And he is a new author, which hopefully you will see his work in the coming days, as he has a new book out April 15th called Calming the Storm, Navigating the Crisis Facing the Catholic Church and Society. It is with great honor that I introduce to you the Reverend Gerald Murray.
So thank you for that kind introduction, and thank our first 2 speakers, very inspiring, and wonderful to hear. We'll speak until about 9 o'clock, but I'm going to stop and have about 15 minutes to have you ask questions. So I'll speak a little less than a half hour. I know there's a portable mic available so people can ask their question. It's great to speak to you precisely because many questions have arisen in the life of the world and in the church about the crises that we're facing, crises of faith, of reason, morality, crisis of understanding who human beings are, how God has made us. So we will discuss that, and then we'll take questions. I did recently publish an interview book, and that book will be on sale tomorrow in the morning, approximately 10:30 in the morning. We'll have a book signing session, and I hope you'll find the book to be a continuation of this talk. Now, the book that I did was with Diane Montagna, who is a journalist in Rome, who has been there for a number of years, and she did an interview book with Bishop Athanasius Schneider, who's from Kazakhstan. And that was an excellent book, and following the publication of that book, Scott Hahn, who was a professor of scripture at Franciscan University of Steubenville, asked Diane and myself if we would do an interview book. So we did that. Now, the interview book form was best known, the Ratzinger Report that came out in 1981. But then in 2015, Cardinal Robert Sarah, who is from Guinea in West Africa, published a book that was an interview with a French journalist named Nicolas Diat. And that book was entitled God or Nothing. And that's an excellent book. I highly recommend it. Cardinal Sarah is a very holy, learned man, and he discussed many different things in the life of the church. He discussed at length his own vocation as a priest. So the book is very inspiring. He talked in that book about 4 problems that are plaguing our society, and I wanted to read a few quotes from the Cardinal and then comment on them. In many ways, what I say is inspired by what Cardinal Sarah has said. He talks about atheism, individualism, subjectivism, and a false notion of God's mercy. So let's look at some of the quotes from Cardinal Sarah, and then I will make a few comments, and then we'll have question and answer period. So Cardinal Sarah was asked about what's the problem in the Western world. It's so inspiring to hear about the deep and devoted faith that the people of Rwanda live, even amidst all the tragedy. But what about Europe and America? Well, Cardinal Sarah said the following: "Today the West lives as if God did not exist. How could countries with ancient Christian and spiritual traditions cut themselves off from their roots to such an extent? The consequences appear to be so tragic that it is essential to understand the origin of this phenomenon. The West decided to distance itself from the Christian faith under the influence of the Enlightenment philosophers and the resulting political currents. Although Christian communities exist that are still vital and missionary, most Western populations now regard Jesus as a sort of idea, but not as an event, much less as a person, whom the apostles and many witnesses of the gospel met and loved, and to whom they consecrated their whole life. This estrangement from God is not caused by reasoning, but by a wish to be detached from him. The atheistic orientation of a life is almost always a decision by the will. Man no longer wishes to reflect on his relationship to God because he himself intends to become God." So that first quote from Cardinal Sarah really sums it up. So much of what we see is man asserting that he creates the rules, he's the one in charge, he will not be told by anyone else what to do. He considers religion to be folklore or taboos inherited from primitive times. All of these kind of critiques are really self-justifications that are given, as Cardinal Sarah says, to make oneself into God. And that, of course, is atheism. That's the falsehood of asserting that God himself doesn't exist. He's simply something that we create ourselves. Now, Cardinal Sarah then shifts into a discussion of individualism. And by individualism, we mean exactly the opposite of what Immaculée was talking about, where family members know each other and they spend a lot of time and they learn from each other. Individualism, this is what the Cardinal says. Atheism has its principal origin in the heightened individualism of European man. The individual king who aspires more and more to a sort of absolute autonomy or independence tends to forget God. On the moral level, this search for absolute liberty implies the gradual, indiscriminate rejection of ethical rules and principles. The individualist universe comes to be centered solely on the person, who no longer tolerates any constraint. Hence, God is considered someone who creates obstacles to confine our will by imposing laws. God becomes the enemy of autonomy and liberty. Wishing to be totally free, man refuses to accept what he considers to be constraints and even goes so far as to reject any form of dependence on God. He rejects the authority of God, who nevertheless created us free, so that by the reasonable exercise of our freedom, we might go beyond our wild impulses and tame all our instincts by taking full responsibility for our life and growth. So this, the Cardinal utters so much wisdom in that statement, because if there's anything we're familiar with in the modern society, it's wild impulses and untamed instincts. People assert they have the right to do whatever they want and they will not be constrained. Now this, of course, we know is a very childish approach. It's an approach of chaos and selfishness, but it really is what we encounter all the time. And that we hear, for instance, in people saying, well, I won't let any church, pope, bishop, or priest tell me what I have to do. Well, then who will tell you what you have to do? Well, I'll decide that for myself. And then you say, well, where did you get all of this knowledge to be able to make good decisions? Oh, don't bother me with details. I'll figure it out. And then what happens? They call it the herd of independent thinkers. Everyone thinks the same way because they're told by the media, by entertainment world, if you do these things, you'll be happy. Of course, they never are happy because what they're doing produces sadness. Now, a third topic that the Cardinal talks about is subjectivism. Subjectivism, which basically means there are no absolutes. Everything depends on your perspective. Now, nobody believes this, and nurses certainly don't believe it, because there is a difference between physical health and illness. And we don't say to the patient, do you feel healthy? You know, do you determine your own health? No, we say, let me find out with the doctor what's going on here. Do you have a disease? Do you have an illness? The fact that you want to be healthy doesn't mean you are. And then nowadays we even have the strange phenomenon of people who want to be sick, but really are healthy. So, what does Cardinal Sarah say about this? Subjectivism is one of the most significant traits of our time. Feelings and personal desires are the only norm. Often modern man regards traditional values as archaeological artifacts. Since the social revolution in the 60s and 70s, it has been common practice to pit individual liberty against authority. Within this context, even among the faithful, it may seem that personal experience becomes more important than the rules established by the Church. If the individual is the central point of reference, everyone can interpret the Church's message in his own way, adapting it to his own ideas. I regret that many Christians allow themselves to be influenced by this pervasive individualism. They may sometimes have difficulty feeling at home within the Catholic Church in her traditional forms, with her dogmas and teachings, her laws, exhortations, and magisterium. Of course, the disparity is even more significant with respect to moral questions. So this is very serious problem in our own society, talking about the United States, Western Europe, but of course it also infiltrates into many other societies where people are told, I know what the church says, that just doesn't fit in with my worldview, that doesn't fit in with my lifestyle. The answer to that is, well, what has to change? Your lifestyle, because what we're telling you is the truth that comes from God. Now, the Cardinal identifies the last thing that I'll quote from him, where he talks about the wrong notion of divine mercy, that God is merciful and forgiving, but God is not a punching bag that we can just punch it out and then everything's fine. You know, God is a God who is also a judge between good and evil. Cardinal Sarah says, many of the faithful rejoice to hear talk about divine mercy, and they hope that the radical demands of the gospel can be relaxed, even for the benefit of those who by their lives have chosen to break away from the crucified love of Jesus. They do not appreciate the price paid by him on the cross, and which delivered every one of us from the yoke of sin and death. They think that because of the Lord's infinite goodness, everything is possible, while at the same time deciding to change nothing in their lives. Many expect as something normal that God should pour out his mercy on them while they remain in sin. And that is a remarkable notion, and it's very current in our own society. Just as an example, and Bishop Coffey, who's a pastor of souls for many years, I think he'll say the same thing. When I was a young priest, very few couples preparing for marriage were living together. It was the exception. Now in the Catholic Church, sad to say, it's the universal norm. Most couples live together. This is my experience in New York City. And when I say to them, do you know that this is not right? They say, we do. But that doesn't move them to change necessarily. And why is that? Well, they've been infiltrated in their thinking and kind of imbibed this spirit. Well, don't really worry because God is so forgiving. In the end, what does it really matter? And of course, the answer to that is, well, God's forgiving if you ask for forgiveness. But if you become accustomed to sin, then you suddenly begin to be thinking, well, maybe that's not really all that sinful. And that's when we enter into the dream world or the make-believe world where reality doesn't exist, but we determine what reality is. So for me, someone would say, well, only what I find sinful is sinful. I won't let the church tell me. This is not the gospel. This is not the order of reality. This is not what the Lord intended for us. Now, all of this goes back to a problem in philosophy that we now face, and I think that really is the crucial factor lying behind relativism and subjectivism and the false notion of mercy, and that is a loss of the sense of reality in modern Western societies. Reality doesn't really exist. What exists is my understanding of reality. I look at the world, I figure out what it means for me, and that's how I live my life. Somebody else figures out a different way, that's up to them to determine for themselves, but who am I to tell them they're wrong? This loss of reality really means that we're saying there is no common understanding possible in the world. All that we can come up with is strategies to make ourselves happy, strategies to manage how we're going to live our lives. Therefore, no one has a right to tell me that I'm wrong. No one has a right to tell me the world exists in a certain manner. And the problem with that, of course, is that when Jesus came to earth, he told us precisely what to do and what not to do. And he established a church and gave them the right to teach later generations. He who hears you hears me. So the church does not propose a teaching in which each of us gets to be, so to speak, our own personal God who makes a reality suitable to our lives. No, that's the diabolical temptation to say no to God and yes to ourselves. Now, the world is understandable, and human reason can come to an understanding of how God made us and how we're supposed to live. And I often think in terms of medical analogies when I'm trying to explain this to people. There is a difference between health and illness. There's a difference between a functioning organ and one that's not functioning. There's a difference between a healthy person and someone who has a handicap or a disease or has been deprived through war or some other horror, let's say lost a limb, etc. All that we know about from medical science teaches us that the way things are is a reflection of the way they're supposed to be. That's how God made us. So when modern man says, well, it's up to me to decide how the world works and I'll figure out how to make myself happy, it's a delusion. And it does promote individualism and selfishness because no one gets a right to tell me what to do. This is ordinarily seen in the realm of sexual morality in our own times, and then it's also in the realm of the basic understanding of human, what it means to be a human being and what it means to be a male or a female. And those things are under constant questioning and assault. Now, God created us in his own image and likeness, and therefore God, who is the perfect intelligence, the perfect reason, he gives us a share naturally through our creation so that we can understand what we're supposed to do in life. But because of man's fallen state, we often make mistakes. And that's what we see in societies dominated by sin or paganism or atheism, that cruelty, superstition, and ways of acting that are harmful become societal norms. Christ came to reveal to us the fullness of truth and give us the understanding of how we are supposed to live and treat each other. So natural reason, the natural law, is fulfilled and made completely understandable through revelation, and then we can live in society in a peaceful and calm manner. This, sad to say, is what is now under assault in Western society. And we see that United States Supreme Court a few years ago determined that two men can marry each other, two women can marry each other. This was a determination against all of human history, experience, and reason. It's also against the religious tenets of all religions. Why did this happen? Well, because of a false notion that what marriage is subject to redefinition by whoever's in charge of writing the laws. This is a problem that we face. Included in that was a recognition of a whole category of people that never existed, don't really exist, but claim to exist. So we have gay, lesbian, bisexual, transsexual, etc., etc., etc. The Catholic Church teaches that Catholic anthropology, meaning the Catholic understanding of the completeness of how God made us, is male and female, he made them. So we are one humanity, male and female, and he said, be fruitful and multiply. Therefore, the sexual faculty is for the purpose of continuing the human race in an expression of love in marriage. Adam and Eve are the model for all subsequent marriages and families. So that reality is rejected, and now we face the challenge that students in school are being told that if they deny the existence of a homosexual marriage, that they are being prejudicial and hateful towards people whom the law recognizes as being married. We have to explain to children, human laws can err. Human laws can make mistakes. God's law is eternal and true. How do we promote happiness and flourishing? Our whole society is very judgmental about exercise, diet, smoking, drug use, although now recreational marijuana is somehow something that people need to use. We have, when you go over a bridge, there's a suicide hotline poster on the bridge so people will read it and not jump off the bridge. Our society makes a judgment that killing yourself is not good. So all of those things are quite clear. Society does make judgments based on what they consider important. But when they take something off that list, suddenly what do we have? There was recently, you're probably more familiar than I am with this, but there was an article I read where people who have a mental illness in which they think that they have to have their healthy arm amputated will go to a doctor and say, this arm needs to go. I don't need to have my arm. And the doctor says, you have no problem there. This arm is healthy. It's meant to be. No, I want it. So some unethical doctors will perform amputations of healthy limbs because someone with a mental illness determines that they don't need that and they don't want it. That's where we go when society rejects norms based on creation and God's law. Now, sadly, in the Catholic Church, we face this same crisis, and it's sad to say it's being promoted by members of the hierarchy, and I'll quote 3 different hierarchies on this topic. Now, as you may be aware, Pope Francis has convoked what's called the Synod on Synodality. So it is a meeting of the bishops of the Catholic Church, which will take place in Rome in October of 2023. But Pope Francis wanted this process to begin at the level of parishes and dioceses in the different countries. So meetings were convoked beginning last fall in different parishes and dioceses, and then national bishops' conferences were asked to send in the results of these meetings in order to come up with an agenda for the meeting in Rome, which will take place in approximately a little over a year from now. So, what happened? Well, even before the Synod of Synodality, the German Catholic Church started what's called the Synodal Way, which is a meeting between an organization of Catholic lay people and representatives of the German bishops. And those meetings have produced the following results. Let me read from a story by the Catholic News Agency, February 7, 2022. And this was talking about a document produced by this German Synodal Way. Participants backed a document on February 5th entitled Blessing Celebrations for Couples Who Love Each Other by 161 votes to 34 with 11 abstentions. They also endorsed further discussion of a text on the magisterial reassessment of homosexuality with 174 votes in favor, 22 against. The text says that the passages in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, which deal with homosexuality and chastity, should be revised as part of a reevaluation of homosexuality. So the German bishops meeting with representative or lay people in an officially recognized organization have voted in favor of a document which says the Catholic Church's teaching on homosexuality is wrong. People who join together in a so-called same-sex marriage deserve to be blessed by a priest. They also went on to support a text calling for the ordination of women as priests. So, of course, those things are against Catholic teaching. And on the German front, we know that Cardinal Marx of Munich gave an interview a couple of months ago in which he said the Catechism is not written in stone, meaning it should be changed on the subject of homosexuality. This comment was met by much anger and appropriate rejection by Catholics who believe in the truth, because the duty of a cardinal is not to contradict Catholic teaching, but to support it. And here he was doing something wrong. He was not the first one, though, to say it. Cardinal Hollerich is the Cardinal of Luxembourg. Luxembourg is a small nation between Germany and France near Belgium. Cardinal Hollerich of Luxembourg said in an interview that the Catholic Church's teaching on homosexuality is no longer correct. He said that the sociological scientific foundation of the Church's teaching on homosexuality was no longer correct. So he's wrong on 2 things. Number one, it is correct because it's revealed by God. But number 2, it's not based on sociology or science, meaning what some scientists claim. It's based on God's revelation, and it's understood by appreciation of the natural law. Now, Cardinal Hollerich said that and was not contradicted by the highest authority of the church. He was criticized by many other cardinals, but this problem continues. His country's synod report came out recently, and there's a story on it that was produced on the Pillar website, which is a Catholic news website. And this is what the Luxembourg Synod document said, quote, "The Church needs a change of view on homosexuality to open up to marriage for all and to abolish the obligation of celibacy for priests." It also said further, "It is necessary to modernize the rules and viewpoints of the Church. To be credible, the Church must acknowledge its errors and question itself." So this is remarkable that the representatives of the Catholic Church in Luxembourg would ever propose such a document for consideration and publication. Marriage for all, marriage is open to all those capable of marriage, meaning men and women who are not incapable of marrying, such as nuns and priests are not capable of marrying. Neither are children of 5 years old. Anyway, but what they mean, marriage for all, is that there be gay marriage. And by the way, if marriage for all, what's wrong with polygamy? Because if 5 people say they want to get married, who are you to tell them that the Bible doesn't approve of that or the Catholic Church disagrees? To say that the Church has viewpoints is wrong. The Church teaches Christ's doctrine. Dogmas of the Church are not simply approaches. To modernize the rules, what rules are they talking about? The 10 Commandments? So this is really a scandal that this document has been published. But, and I'll only cite one more and then we'll pass on to some questions, the Bishops of Belgium. Oh, by the way, I should just note, which is fascinating when you look at the statistics, the report says that 4,590 people took part in this synod on synodality consultation. There are 439,000 Catholics in Luxembourg. That means 1% of the baptized Catholics in Luxembourg had anything to do with this document, which basically means this is a manipulation. It was not a document based on a broad consultation with the people of Belgium, of Luxembourg rather, who are Catholic. To do such a thing is an example of propaganda, not of actual coming to give a credible report after a credible survey. The third one I'll cite, and again, this is scandalous, but this is what's happening right now. The Bishops of Belgium issued their synodal report, and a summary is given. I'll read 2 of the proposals that they're making for consideration at the Synod in Rome in 2023. The Catholic Church should be even more committed to diversity in its teaching. As in the Eastern Catholic Churches, married priesthood should also be possible in the Roman Catholic Church. In great respect for Christian churches that after deep deliberation made the decision to open the ordained ministry to women candidates, we ask for further reflection so that in the future the Catholic Church may recognize the vocation of women to the priesthood. This is an outright denial of Catholic teaching. It is defined dogma that only males who are baptized are capable of receiving the sacrament of holy orders. This subject was studied by Pope Paul VI, and a definitive declaration was made by him. Women are incapable of being ordained to the priesthood because the Church teaches that our divine Savior only chose men to be apostles, who were the first priests, and that he did so as God, meaning he knows all truth and goodness, everything he decides is correct. So to do this by citing the experience of Christian churches, which they mean as Protestant churches, which don't have a priesthood, by the way, so therefore it's not a question of becoming configured to Christ as Christ the high priest. The Eastern Catholic churches and the Orthodox churches never consider ordination of women. It's impossible. They know that. So, this is an example of why we have a crisis in the church. The shepherds are encouraging heretical behavior and denying the truths of the faith in a process in which they claim to be serving Christ and representing him. I'll read one more quote on this. This is recommendation number 3 from the National Belgian Catholic Report. For cohabitating couples, homosexual couples, and remarried persons separated from marriage, it is requested that the Church answer their demand for recognition, ritual and social, from an interpretation of relationships and sexuality that is more consistent with the commandment of love. And the title of this, Don't Condemn Relationships and Sexuality. So this is a clear promotion of homosexual behavior, of living together as man and woman outside of marriage, and for divorce and remarriage. This is not what the Catholic Church teaches to be God's will for mankind. And, you know, it's remarkable that this is where we are in the life of the church, but this is what's happening right now. Now, the question always arises, is this rude to contradict these bishops? Because after all, they're bishops, they're in charge. The answer, of course, to defend the truth of Christ is never a rude thing. It's the most polite thing you can do because it's truthful. And people who are in error need to be told the truth. A person who goes to a doctor and says, I need to amputate my right arm because I don't want it to be there, he needs to be told that's wrong and immoral. We're not allowed to mutilate ourselves. We're not going to allow that. That's the truth. To tell a bishop, we're not going to allow you to contradict the church's teaching under the guise that somehow this is progress and improvement. So this is what has to be done. Now, we have to say a number of American bishops recently signed a statement in which they told the German hierarchy not to do what they're doing. Individual bishops and cardinals have likewise criticized it. Cardinal Sarah is one of them, Cardinal Muller, Cardinal Burke. There are many people who are saying precisely that we have to bring these shepherds back to the faith, not go the way they want to direct us. So for us, and I'll take some questions, I'll just say 4 things in order to do our part in this crisis. First, we have to be faithful to Christ in the Catholic Church. We must never get the temptation to say, the bishops don't know what they're doing, I don't want to be part of their church. Wrong answer. We must stay faithful in the church. Second, strong life of prayer and sacraments. Third, a supernatural outlook. Some people say, I'm very religious when I feel happy, but when I'm disappointed in God, then I question my faith. That's not a supernatural outlook. We have to look at our divine Savior carrying the cross to Calvary. We have to do the same and not waver. And then the last idea I'll share with you is what St. Ignatius of Loyola said, and we just had his feast the other day, ad maiorem Dei gloriam, to the greater glory of God. So everything we do to promote the faith in our work, in our family, in our society, we're doing it for the glory of God, and if it annoys some people, so be it, but we're serving and pleasing the Lord. So with that, I'll stop, and we have about 10 to 15 minutes for any questions you'd like. Thank you.
Raise your hand, then I'll come around. Hello. I haven't heard the Pope respond to this. Did he respond? Because I have heard, in the news about the German bishops and cardinals and what they've said, but I haven't heard anything printed about the Pope responding.
Well, about a year and a half ago, the Pope did write a letter to the German hierarchy and told them not to go where they're going with the synodal way. He did correct them and say, do not lead, I don't have the exact words of it, but he basically, do not lead people in ways that are taking them away from the faith of the church. Sad to say, after receiving that letter, they continued to promote this. So after that letter, they continued these meetings and this kind of rebellious stance. Cardinal Hollerich, He is going to be the Relator General at the Synod in 2023, and his statement was the Pope did not comment on that statement. The Pope has made a number of comments in a recent airplane interview, and he wants discussion in the life of the church. He said that. I would disagree with him in saying that this is not the kind of discussion we want to have. Perhaps he feels that way also, but he hasn't made it clear by saying that we're not going to accept submissions that contradict Catholic teaching. That, I think, would be appropriate. So pray that he will, take full cognizance of what's going on, because this scandalizes. If you have two homosexuals living together and they read that their bishop says that the Catholic Church's teaching is wrong, he's confirming them in sin. That's the road to hell for that bishop and probably for those people. So this is not just a game of who gets to be in charge. This is about Catholic teaching and truth.
Thank you, Father, for taking my question. So I'm a nurse practitioner. I work for the Veterans Affairs, and I just want to ask some questions about Catechism and Canon Law to guide us as providers or as nurses in the VA system, which is now normalizing homosexuality, normalizing transgender changes, normalizing abortion, and coming out from the very top of the VA stating these. And it's even infiltrated the language that we chart in the record. Same-sex marriage, he came in with his husband or she came in with her wife, or getting a message from another provider that says this patient is being cared for in the community but now wants to come to the VA and needs a prescription to continue his hormone therapy because he's transitioning, as if it's a prescription for Motrin. I hadn't even seen the patient, didn't know the patient, never met the patient. So it just causes moral distress. And not only that, but we want to be sure as Catholic providers that we are not promoting a sinful life, that we could damn a patient to hell, or that we could damn ourselves to hell for prescribing such things or going along with such lifestyles. And yet, if we do, for example, I asked my boss, I said, I can't do this. It's against my religion. It's a mortal sin, and I won't do it. I will resign if you. And is there any type of protection or waiver? For example, people who didn't want to get the COVID-19 vaccine could sign a waiver that they didn't want it, and then they have to get tested every week, Anyway, he said, no, there's no waiver. So anyway, it's not that I don't understand the situation, it's that I'm asking you to give us a little more guidance on Catechism and Canon Law and what our responsibility is as a Catholic provider. Thank you, Father.
Yeah, it's a broad question. I'll say a couple of things. We have no control over what the people in charge of the military or veterans affairs about medical things that they will permit. They used to not do so-called gender reassignment. They didn't do bodily mutilation in view of pretending to be a man or a woman. Now they do it. Catholics just say, I'm not going to do that service. Find somebody else. And if they say you're going to get fired, then you contact Alliance Defending Freedom or another good law firm to say this is religious discrimination, et cetera, et cetera. You can get advice on, previous practice of other type of exemptions granted because of conscience concerns. As it regards mandatory language to be used, you're not endorsing the language used as being truthful if it's required of you on a form, So Catholics don't believe, for instance, that people are civilly married. Two Catholics civilly married are not really married in the eyes of the church unless they get a dispensation, but that's very rare. Just people get married outside of the church. We're Catholic, we say the marriage needs to be validated. On the other hand, we commonly call them husband and wife who are married because there's a civil reality that, gives them a public status. But doctors don't have to prescribe medication that they don't think is good or ethical. And take them to court, take me to court would be the answer. Yet, endorsing a lifestyle, you don't endorse a lifestyle simply by cooperating with ordinary medical care for that person or using the language you're compelled to use. So if a man comes in and says, this is my husband and I want him in on this discussion, you can't say, okay, he can be on discussion, but I don't recognize your husband. You just refrain from that. So that would be my advice. But there are a lot of other questions on that, and it's good to keep asking.
Czy ksiądz nie uważa, że obecna sytuacja w Kościele niemieckim jest odzwierciedleniem przypodobania się liberalnym rządom, które od wielu lat już wygrywają wybory i stąd właśnie taka jest również narracja w tym Kościele, podobnie jak Kościół w Rosji, który współpracuje z rządem Putina?
I will translate, yeah. That have you and other priests noticed that, and maybe what do you think about it, that the church in Germany and in Russia, that they their actions go along with the narration of a government that is liberal, that just goes another way, that church?
Well, the German church is heavily influenced by liberal Protestantism and secularism, which are the dominant cultural influences in Germany after the Second World War. The Catholic Church used to have more influence after the war, but they went in a way that's very liberal, hostile to Rome, hostile to traditional teaching. So, that's just a cultural reality. Remember, our Pope Benedict comes from Germany, but he rejected that trend of thought. Cardinal Muller's from Germany, he rejects it. Cardinal Brandmüller's from Germany, he rejects it. So it's not universal, but as in many things, when the group in charge thinks one way, the people who don't agree with them somehow never seem to get in charge. So that's what we're facing. One more question.
Hey, Father. I guess that's a little loud. I really thank you for your talk. I wish a lot more priests would voice the church's teachings the way that you have tonight. I will say, though, of course, all the transgenderism and gay marriage, that's a bunch of silliness that is against church teaching. However, the only thing I do want to open up for discussion that I personally am in favor of opening up for discussion is the idea of having a married priest. I personally know a lot of people who feel called to both marriage and priesthood, and to the best of my knowledge, it's not actually a church teaching. It's something that is more considered just a discipline, a practice, and something that for the first 1,000 years of the church actually wasn't really mandatory. I also did some research about the fact that there are a bunch of men who were Protestant, then they were married, then they became Catholic, went into seminary, so they actually are practicing right now as we speak in the U.S. as married priests. And so the idea that it can't be done, I think, has kind of been disproven. So I was just wondering if you could touch on that too.
Yeah, the question is that it can be done because we have married priests in Lebanon and Ukraine. The Eastern Rite Catholics have married clergy. The exception was made in the Latin Rite for former Protestant married ministers who want to become Catholic priests who were Lutheran and Anglican. But it's not merely a discipline as in something that the church decided on without much thought or could be changed. It's not like changing the midnight fast to 3 hours and then to 1 hour. This goes back to our Lord. Jesus wasn't married. The primary reason why Catholic priests are not married in the Latin Rite is to imitate Christ. You know, we say the priest is a living icon of Christ. So he tries to live that representation both in a manner of personal holiness and in well-trained, knowledgeable, charitable, but also total dedication to the work of the apostolate. So Jesus, the apostolic tradition is the apostles who were married gave up their marital rights when they went out on the apostolate, and certainly imitating Christ the high priest that way is very valuable. Now, Pope Paul VI said it's con-natural with the priesthood. It goes along with it in a natural way. But you can have married priests, as I said, Lebanon, Ukraine, other Eastern Rite priests. But let's just say this, the Catholic Church finds it both spiritually valuable, and then on a practical level, it allows for a great missionary activity in the world, because married clergy are subject to moving and serving. These are practical things, are important, but they're not determinative. But we should note, historically, the spread of Christianity, once the New World was discovered and then later on mission to Africa, was conducted by Latin Rite Catholics by sending priests to those regions. And so it's very valuable. So, yeah, in the first 1,000 years, the church would ordain married men, but they were supposed to live continence. But when you're cohabiting, that becomes a temptation to return to a life of marital intimacy, and that's what happened. So the church then said, we're only going to ordain men who have never been married. This was discussed at the Synod on Amazon, and at that time, Pope Benedict and Cardinal Sarah published essays saying we shouldn't give up this great reality in the Latin Church simply because there's a shortage of priests, or it can be done. And I think this is really valuable, their contribution. The Pope did not pursue the suggestion from the Synod to have married clergy in the Amazon. So we will say this, our world, in the Western world, we've lost faith. Very few seminarians. Where faith is deep, Africa, Philippines, Korea, seminaries have lots of candidates. So where the faith is strong, there will be men to propose themselves for ordination. So I want to thank you for your attention, and tomorrow I'll have the books available. A lot of what I said, you'll be able to read some more in the book. Thank you.
Wow, right? I would like to, not only would I like to thank you, I would like to remind all of you that there will be a book signing, I believe, Father, 10:30 tomorrow? Okay, 10:30. Please, if you have any other thoughtful questions, I'm sure that Father could at least address those. I do have a couple of mentions, and that is that the buses will be here or are here, but that I'm reminding you of the schedule tomorrow, that we have a daily mass and rosary here in the main church at 7:30. Followed by a continental breakfast, 8:15 to 9:15, and then we will resume our schedule. And with that, I want to thank you. This has been empowering and thought-provoking and growing in our faith and in our intellect and as nurses. So I'd like to wish you all a safe trip home. God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow.